60 million years ago, the Earth conducted a terrifying experiment. The dinosaurs were gone, wiped out by an asteroid that left the planet broken and burning. In the vacuum they left behind, we usually assume mammals, our ancestors, rose up to take the throne. We are wrong. Before the age of mammals, there was a brief, sweltering window of time where the world belonged to something else. A creature that defied the laws of physics as we understand them today. It was a predator so large that mathematically it shouldn't have been able to move. It was heavier than a giraffe, longer than a city bus, and possessed a crushing force that could flatten a car. For decades, science said this animal was impossible. Biology dictated that a snake simply could not grow to 50 feet in length. Its own body weight would crush its internal organs. But deep in the jungles of South America, the Earth hid the evidence of a nightmare that proved science wrong. This is the story of the largest land predator to crawl across the planet since the T-Rex. And it didn't die because it was weak. It died because the world became too cold to hold it. To understand how a monster this size remained hidden for so long, you have to look at where it was found. Northern Colombia is home to Cerrejón, one of the world's largest open-pit coal mines. It is a desolate, industrial scar on the landscape, blasted by blinding heat and dust. But strip away the coal and you are looking at the floor of an ancient rainforest. In 2002, a student visiting the mine kicked over a rock and found a fossilized leaf, then another, then a jawbone. It became clear that the miners were digging through a mass grave from the Paleocene epoch, the direct aftermath of the dinosaur extinction. When a team of paleontologists arrived in 2009 to catalog the finds, they expected to find turtles, lungfish, and perhaps early crocodiles, and they did. They found crocodile bones everywhere. It made sense. In a flooded tropical swamp, crocodiles are the kings, but as they sifted through the crate of crocodile vertebrae, one bone didn't fit. It was a vertebra, but it was devoid of the complex protrusions found on a croc's spine. It was smooth, T-shaped, and massive. It was the size of a Thanksgiving turkey. The scientists held it up against the spine of a modern anaconda, the heaviest snake alive today. The anaconda bone looked like a pebble next to a boulder. The realization in that lab wasn't excitement, it was confusion. If this was a snake, the scaling laws of biology suggested a creature of mythical proportions. They ran the math, and the numbers came back absurd. The owner of that vertebra wasn't just big, it was a leviathan. They named it Titanoboa cerrejonensis, but identifying the bones was the easy part. The hard part was explaining how it existed at all. This is where the story shifts from paleontology to thermodynamics. You see, snakes are prisoners of the sun. As cold-blooded animals, or ectotherms, they cannot generate their own body heat. They are engines powered by the ambient temperature of their environment. In our modern world, the equator is hot, but it has a limit. That heat limit dictates that a snake can only get so big, roughly 25 to 30 feet, before it becomes metabolically impossible to survive. For Titanoboa to reach 45 or 50 feet and weigh 2,500 pounds, the Earth had to be radically different. The discovery of this snake wasn't just about finding a monster. It was about reading a thermometer from 60 million years ago. The existence of Titanoboa proves that the Paleocene tropics were a hothouse, unlike anything humans have ever walked in. We are talking about average yearly temperatures hovering near 90 degrees Fahrenheit, day and night, with crushing humidity. The rainforests of ancient Colombia didn't just grow, they exploded with life. The canopy was thicker, the rivers were darker, and the oxygen cycle was churning at maximum efficiency. In this superheated world, a snake's metabolism could run in overdrive. The heat allowed Titanoboa to bypass the size limits that constrain modern boas. It could digest massive meals faster, grow relentlessly, and maintain the energy required to move a body that weighed over a ton. The climate was a steroid, and Titanoboa was the result. But moving a 1-ton body presents a mechanical problem. On land, gravity is a cruel mistress. A snake of that mass trying to move across a forest floor would be a disaster. Its ribs would risk fracturing under its own weight. The friction would be exhausting. Hollywood movies like to show giant snakes rearing up high and chasing people down muddy paths. That is pure fiction. Titanoboa would have been clumsy and vulnerable on solid ground, so it didn't stay on the ground. It went into the water. The environment of Cerrejón wasn't a flowing river. It was a stagnant, vast swamp system similar to the Mississippi Delta, but on a prehistoric scale. In the water, Titanoboa became weightless. The buoyancy supported its mass, allowing it to move with a terrifying, silent grace. This brings us to the most chilling aspect of this animal, the hunt. Titanoboa was not a persistence hunter. It didn't chase, it waited. Its eyes were positioned on the top of its skull, a clear evolutionary adaptation for surface ambush. It would submerge that massive body into the tannin-stained black water, leaving only its nostrils and eyes above the surface, looking like nothing more than floating debris. The swamp was teeming with food. There were lungfish 7 feet long. There were turtles with shells as thick as armor plating, and there were crocodiles. Lots of them. In the modern world, a crocodile will eat a snake. In the Paleocene, the roles were reversed. When a 15-foot dinosaur, an ancient crocodile relative, swam past the log that wasn't a log, the strike would have been faster than the human eye could track. Snakes have explosive muscle fibers that allow them to launch half their body length in a fraction of a second. Titanoboa didn't kill with venom. It didn't need it. It killed with geometry and pressure. Once it looped its coils around a crocodile, it wasn't just squeezing the air out, it was shutting down the circulatory system. The pressure exerted by Titanoboa is estimated to be 400 pounds per square inch. That is roughly equivalent to having the Brooklyn Bridge stacked on top of your chest. When it constricted, the prey didn't slowly suffocate. The pressure was so immense that blood could not return to the heart. The heart would pump against a wall of pressure until it failed. Ribs would snap, organs would compress, and death would be caused by circulatory arrest. It was instant, brutal, and effective. After the kill, Titanoboa faced the challenge of consumption. Snakes possess a kinetic skull. Their jaws are not fused, allowing them to stretch their mouths over prey much larger than their heads. Swallowing a crocodile whole would take hours. Once the meal was inside, the snake's powerful stomach acids, turbocharged by the tropical heat, would dissolve bone, shell, and flesh. A single meal of that size could sustain a Titanoboa for an entire year. For millions of years, this was the status quo. Titanoboa was the undisputed apex predator of the South American tropics. It had no enemies. It had unlimited food. It was the perfect biological machine for its environment. So why isn't it here today? The demise of Titanoboa is a stark reminder of how fragile dominance really is. We often think of extinction coming from asteroids or volcanoes, violent, sudden events. But Titanoboa was killed by something much more subtle, the weather report. As the epochs ground on, the Earth began to shift. The intense greenhouse conditions of the Paleocene gave way to a cooling trend. Plate tectonics shifted the continents, altering ocean currents and air patterns. The global thermostat began to dial down. For a mammal, a drop of a few degrees is an inconvenience. We burn calories to stay warm. But for Titanoboa, the temperature drop was an apocalypse. As the ambient heat faded, so did the snake's metabolic power. A colder world meant a slower metabolism. A slower metabolism meant it couldn't digest food fast enough to support its massive bulk. It meant it couldn't move as quickly to catch prey. The very size that had made it a king became its prison. Simultaneously, the world around it was drying up. The vast, endless swamps of the Cerrejón retreated, replaced by drier forests and seasonal rivers. The habitat shrank. The giant turtles and crocodiles became smaller or scarcer. Titanoboa didn't vanish overnight. It was a slow generational fade. The snakes that hatched were smaller, trying to adapt to a cooler world. But the genetics of a giant couldn't pivot fast enough. Eventually, the calories required to run the machine simply weren't there. The monster starved, not for lack of food, but for lack of heat. By 58 million years ago, they were gone. The era of the giant reptiles was truly over, and the path was finally clear for mammals to grow, evolve, and eventually lead to us. When we look at the fossil of a Titanoboa vertebra today, we aren't just looking at a big bone, we are looking at a warning. Life on Earth is inextricably tied to the climate it lives in. Nature pushes the boundaries of what is possible, creating monsters when the conditions are right and erasing them when the balance tips. Titanoboa was the ultimate opportunist, a creature that seized a specific moment in geological time and maximized it to a terrifying degree. It reminds us that we are not the permanent masters of this planet. We are just the current occupants, thriving in a climate that happens to suit us. But if history teaches us anything, it is that the climate always changes. And when the world shifts, the giants are often the first to fall. The If you found this glimpse into the prehistoric world fascinating, there is a simple button below that helps keep these stories alive. Subscribing doesn't cost a thing, but it allows us to keep digging deeper into the past, to bring these monsters back to the light. Click that button, and I'll see you in the next one.